tonight's guest is Jack McClellan. Jack, welcome to the show.
How's it going?
Oh, it's going good, but how are things going for you?
Oh man, they're all right. Just busy as usual, work and school, and just trying to stay alive out here.
Yeah, that's not all that easy. I know. Jack, please give us a brief bio on yourself.
All right. Well, I am a full-time university student in North Florida. I go to Florida State University, and when I'm not doing that, I work at a hospital in an IT department. And my aspirations and goals in life are filmmaking and documentation and stuff like that, documentary work. And so that's what I'm going to school for, is for film. I do both narrative and, like I said, documentary work on the side, as both commercial and, personal passion and narrative projects. I hope to one day get myself out there, and 'cause I love to entertain people. I love for people to see things. And part of my passion when it comes to documentary work is maybe showing someone something they haven't seen before. I've done some cryptid-related documentary work, specifically on Sasquatch, and it's just very fun to me. It's exciting because a lot of people don't like to talk about it, and I think it's a good thing to talk about. And so when I get a chance to put it out there, and I just like to also learn and share my experiences with people, which is why I'm here with you, because I have a very exciting and I think noteworthy experience, and I'm just honored to be here.
Well, we're honored to have you. And what's the name of that Sasquatch documentary you just mentioned?
It's a short one that I did for class. It's called Bridges, Disturbances in Flat Creek. It was more so done as almost of a like a screw you, I can do it. My professor was trying to hand me a subject to make a documentary on that I wasn't very fond of, and I respectfully asked if I could do something different and more exciting, and he granted me permission under the guise that I probably wouldn't be able to do it. Well, I did it, and I based it around a family that lives about 20 minutes from my current location. They're old family friends that have had numerous encounters with what initially they believed to be Sasquatch, and now they believe is something far more than that. And they're on their property for probably close to or over a decade now, if not longer. They've been on Animal Planet, they've been on different networks, they've had several researchers out there, and they have since stopped having people out for many personal reasons, but they were more than kind enough to let me come out there and research and do a short documentary. And I have tons of footage, but I had to really chop it all down to a pretty short documentary for school and for, class purposes. But I poured my heart and soul into it for about a whole month and pumped out something I'm really proud of. And I think it opened a lot of eyes, specifically at FSU, because when everyone heard that I did a BIGFOOT doc, they were, there was the kind of oh, that's what he did. But then they watched it, and I actually wound up getting lots of questions, like, did this really happen? Did you actually go out there? And said, yes. And if you think that's weird, imagine how these people are having it. They live there. I used to live out in places like that. So it did its job. It made people, ask questions. So, and that's what I set out to do.
Well, it goes without saying, I'm glad your professor let you switch to a much more interesting topic for your documentary. That's great. Jack, when you were 8 or 9, you had an experience with an unexpected creature that wasn't a dogman. Please talk us through that.
Oh, so let me preface exactly the situation. So, my family, we had, it is a horse field now, but now it's a donkey field because we got rid of the horses too. But it was a lot of property because we technically live down in a hole where we live. It's an old church area. It's called Old Church Road, actually. And we lived down in the hole near a lake, a beautiful little small lake. And at the top it used to be, I guess, thick woodland. We had a little path cut through it, specifically for some family friends that would come over and stay at a old camp that we had built up there. My dad had built up there many, many, many years ago. In exchange of them staying there, they were allowed to hunt as long as they took care of my grandmother, who lived right down the road, took care of her property and, tended to it and kept it looking very nice. And when I was 8 or 9, my mother had come to the realization that she wanted horses, even though she probably didn't need any. So we wound up clearing that property. It was a very exhaustive process, but not too terribly long before we cleared that. I was up there. My father and mother had just invested in a golf cart because we were about to be going up and down the hill a whole lot more. And being at the tender age of 9, I was, of course, driving the golf cart around like I shouldn't be. And I remember going up to the top of the hill. This was like a week, maybe less, before we started clearing everything. I really forget. But I remember driving up to the, facing the shed, the front of my golf cart facing the shed, and or the little camp or whatever you want to call it. We just call it the shed. Everyone has a different name for it. But I remember getting off because I like to go hang out. There's cool stuff in their old, farm tools and whatnot. And I remember hearing something very strange and obtuse, very fast paced, shall we say. It was kind of clamoring, sounded like it was clamoring from treetop to treetop, maybe scratching down some side of the bark. And being 9, I can't really accurately, 100% tell you what it was. All I remember is that it was small, not like, small as in, like a cat small, like maybe like a medium sized dog, but it almost appeared to have like the body shape of a deer is the best I can describe it. It was kind of orangish yellow, but I remember specifically seeing it go from the top of one tree, or midway down, because these are some tall pines, go from one tree, jump onto the roof of the little shed, a little overhang that comes off, and then from there bolt on the ground and just take off running to the right of the shed, left if you're coming out of the shed, take off left, my right. And I specifically remember thinking, even at that age, that wasn't any normal animal. That the only animals around my property that move that fast up and down trees and off trees onto roofs are squirrels, and I don't know of any squirrel that big. I do remember it had like whitish, kind of white colored dots on it. Like I said, it reminded me very much of a deer almost, but obviously far more agile, and must have had actual fingers or claws that it can grip with, because a deer climbing a tree like that's impossible, or at least around here it is. I don't know what other kind of deers are out there, but it really stuck with me. And I remember as a kid it did freak me out a little bit, but it didn't send me into a spiral or anything. It was more so just a very just truly bizarre situation. And even then my folks chalked it up to me just being a silly 8 or 9-year-old. I don't know what I saw. It was crazy. That was the first experience I really remember at that young of an age that really stuck with me because of how just truly bizarre it was. That's like the best word to sum it all up, is just bizarre.
Yeah, sounds awfully bizarre. I'm not really sure what to make of that. It looked somewhat like a deer, but here it is climbing trees and doing all that crazy stuff. That's a lot to wrap your mind around.
Yeah, it was very, very strange.
Yeah, sure sounds like it. Before we move on, if you've had a Dogman encounter of your own and would like to speak with me about it, whether in private or on the show, either way is fine, please go to dogmenencounters.com and submit a report. I'd love to hear from you. All right, Jack, please tell us about your encounter now. Give us every last detail that comes to mind.
All right, so it was towards the end of my high school. Either I was just about to get out of high school or I was out of it and starting community college. So all I remember is it was rather late, and that's back when I used to hang out in an area or a county near my home called Liberty County. I was coming home from Liberty County. I just visited my friends and my girlfriend. They're all in a town called Bristol, which is was about 25, 30 minutes from my home then. And it was late. And I mean, it definitely not my first rodeo driving home late at night. I do it all the time. If you live in the country, it's going to happen. And I specifically remember I was tired. I've been up all day. I'm an early bird and a night owl, so I torture myself all the time. And so I was going home, taking one of the main highways to get to my house. It's called Highway 12. And there's one little kind of left turn you can make halfway to my home called Pine Grove Church Road. And it's pretty out in the open. Pine Grove Church Road got its name because of the church there that is on Pine Grove, so Pine Grove Church Road. There's also a cemetery located next to the church as well. And I decided to take that route because technically speaking, it's quicker to get home that way. And so I'm going down Pine Grove. It's a bright night out. The moon is pretty high. It's pretty bright out, which, not uncommon when there aren't many trees out in that, particular area. So it's really pretty. And there's it's like a fork you come to in the road where it's like a T, or not fork, it's like a T. And, I'm coming up on the T, and on my left going, so I would be going north. I'd be heading north. Yeah. So on my left, is the cemetery. I just passed the church, and I remember seeing at the time what I thought was just a very incredibly large dog. And so I naturally slowed down because I've had many situations where animals run out in front of you. In the country, animals are just juiced up. They're all crazy. So they see a car headlights. They're like, oh, I'm going to chase it. And that's how accidents happen. So I'm slowing down. I just got this new Jeep too. It's the Jeep Renegade, and I don't want to hit anything or damage my car. So I slow down a bit. Not a complete stop or anything, but, slower. And I'm, tracking the dog, but also paying attention to what's in front of me because it's not impossible to come across people on this road. And so I'm slowing down a little bit, and the dog does decide to finally go across the road. Fine. So I slow down a little bit more. And I'd say it was about a little over maybe halfway across the road that I really thought to myself, holy moly, this is a really big dog. It was really dark black, maybe grayish, some grayish highlights possibly, but what stuck with me was just how big it was. And I'm not just talking sheer mass. I'm talking, muscle. It was just like a wall, and it really struck me. And the first thing I thought was, this is like a big bulldog. This is a big, giant, angry bulldog, and I'm not going anywhere near it. And he got across the road, and he's probably about 40 or 50 feet in front of me, I'd say, at this point. He definitely, even though he was just walking across on all fours, he had some speed to him. I mean, I would imagine he's so big, his limbs, he can travel a farther distance, than a smaller animal with just a few steps. But he's getting towards the other side of the road, my right, when he just stands up on his hind legs. And I'm not talking stands up like a bear and, kind of straightens his back and looks around, waddles maybe, and then gets back on all fours. Now this animal stood up on his hind legs, and I could see in the moonlight a little bit anyways, and a little bit of my headlights too, just the definition, like the back of the legs, because when he stood up, my first immediate thought was, oh God, that's not a dog, that's a bear. But then I immediately also thought, well, wait a second, bears are big, fluffy, very thick, they look more like stumps for legs than necessarily actual, muscular legs, because they have all that fur. And this was muscle. You could see it, and you could just almost like feel it. And I never got a chance to really make a proper, I guess, judgment as to what the face looked like. I know that it had a more canine looking face. I don't really remember specifics. If the ears that I did see were smaller, they weren't, very long. They were definitely shortened. And bulldogish is the word I would use to describe it, is if I did describe it. It was very bulldogish, very short. And the animal was on his hind legs moving briskly. Not running, but definitely it had some speed to it. And at that point, it had meandered off the side of the road and had gotten behind a few trees and was going on. And at that point, I was so confused and somewhat shocked, but also intrigued and amazed. And so I raced home, told my mother and my father at the time when I was still living at home. And the response was, it's midnight, you're home late, you're up early, you're tired, you've been busy all day. Big dog, just go to sleep. You got work in the morning. So I thought to myself, maybe they're right. Because I do tend to believe I'm a fairly logical person. I think things out. And so I kind of put it in the back of my mind, this would be a funny story to tell someone, one day at a party, maybe, I don't know. And, I finally get around to telling my coworker about it, my job. And I've only been at this job for a couple weeks now. I got it when I immediately got out of high school. So so that was after high school, definitely. Now that I say that, yeah, because I was out of high school at the time because my other job in high school was at a newspaper, and this was not that job. This was at a hospital. And so I'm talking to my coworker, and she actually lives on Pine Grove with her husband. They have a small little farm out there. They raise chickens. They do a few other livestock, like some pigs and some goats. They used to have cows, but I'm pretty sure they have tried to cut out having cows because of nuisance involving coyotes and such of late. But I told her about the encounter I had, and thinking, this would be funny. She'll probably get a kick out of this. And then this had been a couple of days after the event, because I never really had a chance to speak to her. We were pretty busy. We were pretty busy up there. And so I finally got around to telling her, and she asks me, when did this happen? And I told her, it was, a few days ago or whatnot. And, it was, about this time at night. And she said, well, that's funny, because a few days ago, around that time, she noticed she has a motion alarm system out in her farm, around her little farm area, because of the coyotes and stuff that come and just mess with her livestock, because her chickens are her secondary source of income. So she's very mindful of her chickens. And so she told me, she said that she had gotten an alert on her alarm system that there was something big moving, setting off all the alarms. So she, being the good old fashioned country woman that she is, stepped out on her porch with, she had shotgun ready to rock and roll. She's a hardballer, and she knows what she wants, and she knows how she operates. So she was ready to blow anything away out there. And she said she stood out on her porch, and that her motion sensors are accompanied by lights that go off with the, when they detect motion. And so the little solar lights, she said she could see them coming on one at a time in the distance. And that the farm animals that she had at the time would kind of react to it. They would kind of like almost move away from the lights, and that the lights were coming on one at a time, coming towards her house, which she found very strange, because if it were a pack of coyotes, it'd be kind of more haphazard. This was like it's one single entity. And that's when she said she initially thought she was looking at a bear standing on its hind legs. But then it dawned on her how fast this thing was moving, and how deliberate the leg movements were, that they were moving like almost like human legs, but with more doggish characteristics, and that they were in, she described them as being very toned, very, very toned, which kind of matches up with what I saw. I saw something that had, large musculature to it, and that, tone, they kind of match up a little bit. And granted, so she was looking at it from further away, didn't have, headlights on it. Instead, she's got these motion lights that it's running through. And she said it didn't mess with any of her livestock. It definitely upset them, though. She said that night her livestock went haywire, and that haywire, no pun intended, but they went haywire and wouldn't shut up for a long time. Like either it was still there or had just left such a distinct impression on them. And she said it really freaked her out, and it is hard to freak her out. She's tough woman. And so when she told me that, it kind of just reinforced my belief that I did see something crazy. Because, I'm over here thinking, everyone might have a point. I might just have been tired, and my mind, I have a very active imagination. My mind might have been playing tricks on me. But now that I have a second person who was also very much, they ground themselves in reality, to come forth and say, no, I saw something too. And it sounds like it's what you saw. That really helped me. And it just further proves that anyone who sees these things, they remember, and it makes an impression on them, because it definitely made an impression on me, and it's stuck with me ever since, because it was such a different and such an incredible encounter. It was undeniably freaky. There's no way it couldn't be. And then anyone in that situation, if you didn't react with a little bit of, if not fear, maybe just some general discomfort, then you saw something different, because it was truly not of this normal world. It looked like something out of a movie, which is, I guess, half the reason why it really just amazes me so much, because it's stuff like that I'm so used to it just being fake, that this was real. It was an actual real thing, and it freaked me out a little bit, but it didn't get me to a point where I was dwelling on it. I'm not afraid to go out at night. So I was raised in the woods. So knowing that thing's out there is both equally exciting and frightening, but it's also just more so exciting to me because it's out there, this incredible, unexplainable presence that some people just don't want to talk about. Because if she saw it, a person of her self-appointed logic, if she could see it and react to it and know what it was, then there have to be so many other people who have seen things like that and they just don't want to admit it. It's almost like they're afraid to. If they don't talk about it, it's not real. If I don't think about it, it can't scare me. Don't let it scare you. Just accept that there's something different out there. And you maybe, it kind of brings you down a notch. It kind of almost reminds you just how not special we are, in my opinion. I mean, we as human beings, we think that we're the primary, most dominant species on this planet. We may be the most powerful to an extent, but as singular human beings, I know if you put me in a room alone with what I saw, I'd feel pretty insignificant. And that's just because of the, just almost, there is an otherworldly aura to it because feels like it's something out of this world. And it's just stuck with me because it's a truly spectacular thing. And I can completely understand why some people get as upset as they do when they see it. As you and I have discussed, it's different. It's just so different and so, hard to almost absorb in your mind because, I think everyone tries to think of things logically. Some are better than others. But when you just see something like that, it truly just throws you off balance. And some people, I guess, can't just rebalance themselves. But that was my main encounter that I spoke of or I've spoken to you of, and it's just stuck with me ever since.
Well, I can understand why it has stuck with you ever since. You told us about the encounter your friend had. Considering how much that experience shook her up, did she move or is she still living there?
She's still there. Like I said, she is a tough woman, and she and her husband are both tough. They've gone through a lot of hardships out there, things that would have made me move, but they chose to stay. And she's kind of the mindset that, if something happens, something happens. If she's going to go down, she's going to go down with a fight. Like I said, she's a tough one. And if anyone could handle themselves in that situation, I imagine it would be her. I don't know how she'd handle it, probably with a gun, but hey, she can handle it. Like I said, she's tough. And plus, she has something of a monopoly out there when it comes to the chicken eggs. I don't know what she's feeding those chickens, but their eggs are massive and delicious. And, she makes so much money selling her eggs to people around there. I probably wouldn't move either.
Huh. Yeah, I can't blame her. She must have something good going on then.
She really does.
Yeah, sounds like it. Did the dogman you saw have any discernible emotion on its face when you saw it?
Emotion? Not that I could tell. It was almost like it was just kind of, because when I first saw it, it was, on the left side of the road on all fours. I couldn't really make out because of how dark it was at the time. Because when I first saw it, I saw it out of the corner of my eye on the side of the road and coming up on it because it's a bit of a curve. And so I'm thinking, just a dog, slow down. What else is new? It might have been possibly scavenging for food because I know there's a ditch on both sides of the road, and people in our country or our part of the country are complete pigs, and they love to throw out the trash, including uneaten food on the side of the road, and they love to pollute and litter everything. So he could have been looking for food. He could have been maybe, I don't know, just caught the scent of something that was already scavenging the food. I couldn't really see the face, so I couldn't, really tell you what it was doing, but that would be my best guess is maybe it was interested in something. But when it went across the road, it's like it was, like I said, it was in no rush. Maybe somehow it knew that I wasn't a threat because I did slow down for it. I mean, because I don't want to, hit it. And especially when it's that big, it's liable to do more damage to my car than I am to it at that point. But I really couldn't make out his face, to be honest with you. I mean, I could make out more of the general shape, which is how I came up to the canine appearance. The snout region was definitely thinner than that of like a bear's, because the first thing I once again would go to is bear, because the only thing we have out in our part of Florida that could compare that in size, and being able to stand up would be a black bear. But they're actually not as common in this particular area as a lot of people would think they are, because bears are incredibly shy too. That's the thing. If a bear were crossing the road with me there, it would be just hauling tail in whatever opposite direction it could find. It wouldn't gallivant across the road like that. And like I said, it just, and this was more muscular than a bear. You know, a bear is a big teddy bear. You want to put your arms around it and hug it. This thing, solid. You know, it's like it made me think of a bodybuilder dog. That's the best way I can put it. And so, in terms of emotions, I really couldn't see any. I couldn't even see, because it never even actually looked at me. It was more so just looking to the side of me, away, you know, the opposite side of the road. It never really once stared me down or looked at me really hard. It probably would have freaked me out more if it did, honestly. That's probably one thing that really helped, is that it didn't really acknowledge my presence outside of just moving across the road. Because if this thing had maybe possibly gone out of its way to let me know that it saw me and that it was possibly upset by that, that would have, you know, probably gauged a different response from me. But what I saw seemingly was a more passive, giant, muscular bodybuilder bulldog. Best I can describe it, with a thinner snout, of course. It's like I said, like not like incredibly long, thin snout like you see on a lot of run-of-the-mill, you know, werewolf designs or dogman designs you see on shows and books. It was definitely a bit shorter than one of those, like more, because those more look almost like husky snouts. This was more shorter, more like a bulldog but thinner. So it kind of came to a point way sooner, almost more like a nub almost, to put it in an odd way. But like I said, I really couldn't make out a face, and my coworker, she really couldn't make out a face either, other than just saying what she saw body wise, and that, you know, from the features she saw, it was a large, dark animal with fur, and, you know, the obvious kind of toned appearance. What she could see, more toned, because she was further away seeing it than I was.
That sure does sound like a strange-looking dog, man. You said it looked somewhat like a bulldog. Does that mean its head was disproportionately large compared to its body?
Not so much. Definitely a large head, but not a ridiculous amount like I've seen some bulldogs. It was definitely more proportionate. The only features on it that seemed, if anything, out of proportion might have been the paws on the hind legs. They were large. But I would imagine it has to be to support something that big. That'd just be my guess. I'm no biologist over here or anything like that, but, or whoever would study something, or I'm no cryptozoologist. So I couldn't accurately tell you if maybe I was also seeing parts of the shadow on the ground behind it, kind of like an optical illusion. But I do think the paws, to my recollection, were rather large, but not like, they definitely had a more paw appearance. You know, the first thing that people would say, like, oh, that, you know, maybe it was a man in a suit or something. But nah, these were definitely more canine, once again, looking. They had that kind of smaller, rounded appearance, just large. The thing was big, really, really big. The fur wasn't too long on it. The most I could make out of the fur would probably be like around the middle spine area. It looked like that's where it was the longest of what I could see. Other than that, the fur was fairly skin tight, much like a bulldog. You know, when I think of bulldogs, I think of, you know, extremely short fur. You can see the muscles. That's kind of what this made me think of.
As far as those paws go, if you think about it, a creature like a dogman that's adapted to walk bipedally on digitigrade-style paws or back legs, having big feet, that's an adaptation that would make perfect sense for balance purposes. So it's no surprise at all to hear eyewitnesses talk about seeing big paws on dogmen's feet. It would just make sense.
There you go. I don't feel so wrong in assuming that now.
Oh, not at all. No, it just fits. The cemetery you mentioned has an interesting history from what I understand. What's the story behind that?
The cemetery I live on, well, my home, because I live on a cemetery road, Old Church Road. There are two church roads very close to each other, within a minute of one another. Now, as far as the history of Pine Grove, I'm not too well versed on. I do know that there have been some stranger church activity out there, is what I've heard a description of. Stranger in quotations, like they do some odd things out there. Now, I do know that the church road that I grew up on, Old Church Road, which is, like I said, just a minute down the road, it's had tons of history involving Native Americans and like homesteaders coming across, specifically with European settlers moving across Florida, I suppose. Several families were actually killed by local Native Americans at the time. In fact, there's a spot at Old Church Road, the cemetery out there, that also has a church on the cemetery there. It's called the Old Sycamore Church. The church was built in 1853, if I remember correctly. It's got an old placard out front. It's been a while since I've been there. I used to run there when I was younger. But there's actual little dedication spot there to the families. So it was specifically women and children that were murdered, or I believe it even says executed, by the local Native Americans at the time. They were scalped. It's a pretty rough history, but I mean, given the history in general of America, it's not completely all that unexpected. And that's the main history that's hung around the local cemeteries and my little community there. Everyone has issues if they want to call it the Greensboro area, the Sycamore area, because we live right near a town called Greensboro, but it's actually called Sycamore. It's very confusing. But the Old Church Road that a bulk of my family lives on, that's the history that really kind of looms over that. It's a dark history, and I know I've heard some people in the past say that kind of contributes in a way to the activity I've seen. I'm not really sure how I feel about that, but it's definitely an interesting take. But that's my interpretation of it.
Well, as you know, a lot of people say there is a connection between Native American burial grounds, for example, and Dogman encounters. I don't know if there's anything to it, but seems like it's a possibility.
It could be.
Do you think there's any connection between the fact that cemetery was so close by and you having that encounter that you had?
Possibly. I mean, the cemetery that my home is located really close to, the one even closer than Pine Grove. Like I said, when I was younger, early high school days, I used to use that as my running track. So that'd be one of my waypoints I'd run to all hours of the day. And I never saw anything there, the actual cemetery that's had a troubled past. But at Pine Grove, driving home one night, and I see one of the most bizarre things I've ever seen. So I'm not really sure if they're connected in any way, because it was a completely different area, but they're not far from each other at all. I mean, for something that size, he could probably hightail it from Pine Grove Church Road to Old Church Road, which, like I said, are just a minute apart. From a car going by the way the eagle or the crow flies, that's even closer. And it was something that big and that sizable. I'm sure he can move incredibly fast. So I could totally see him maybe just wandering around, and that's part of his stomping ground out there. It could fit in with the Bridges family that lives just minutes down the road from my home. They live closer to my home than I lived than where I live now. So, and they have by their own admission from other researchers, their home's an epicenter for things like that. So it could totally have something to do with all of that, and it would make sense to me, especially going off of what the Bridges have told me on multiple occasions, both on and off the record. So it could make sense to me.
Yeah, that just might be what's going on. It's hard to say. Would you say that your Dogman encounter was the most profound thing that's ever happened to you? If not, what was?
Profound as in an extraordinary experience like that? Yes. It definitely was the most exciting one too, I'd say that, and that's another good word now that I think about it, exciting, because it has stuck with me. It really helped me, shall I say, sympathize, maybe empathize with people who also have these encounters. Because before I had that, I mean, the Bridges, I keep coming back to them because they're an excellent example, living right down the road from me. Way before I ever had my Dogman encounter, I remember seeing them on Finding Bigfoot and thinking, that's crazy. I've been living out here for 15 years now, and I've never seen anything like that. I've never experienced anything like that. Well, how could they be seeing something that I'm not? We live in the same stretch of woods. Well, fast forward a few years and I finally see something. And, it made me kind of almost like put me in my place. And it kind of made me think, okay, so maybe I shouldn't be so ignorant to this. And it has stuck with me. It's influenced, how I feel about other people who share the same thoughts. Prior to that, if I had met someone who was so adamant about it, I might, have the same response I had back then was, I don't know, his lid may not be screwed on too tight, but now I do look at it and I can seriously say, with 100% faith and belief in myself that, yeah, you've probably seen something ridiculous and crazy, but it's real. And people just don't want to believe you. And that has stuck with me. Like when I met my buddy Connor Flynn, who you've had on your show before. We met each other through my Bigfoot documentary. I happened to bring it up when the first time I met him. Didn't even know he was a investigator, and then our friendship started and just rooted off from there. And then I told him about my experience, and he kind of gave me the same response that I give people, and that was, yeah, you saw something, and that's kind of special, and it sticks with you, and it's influenced my outlook on documentaries, my outlook on how people just in general handle it. It's manipulated my thought process on narrative writing too. When I write my more, crazy stories, I'm actually more prone now to try to approach it differently. Cause, before I'd be like, oh, it's some werewolf monster. But now I can actually kind of go, logically, this could be a creature that exists. And, how could that work? One of my films I just did, The Void Cat, I kind of made it more of like a dogmanish werewolf creature. I worked on that with Connor. It was definitely took on more of a werewolf form, and that kind of came from my general obsession still with what I saw. And it was just really, really freaky. And not only that, this kind of fits in where we filmed our latest film, The Void Cat. The location we shot at was a family friend of ours, about 15 minutes from my home, closer to where I live now. Funny enough, everything's so close or far out here, depending on where I live. The location is actually where I first met the Bridges, and that's where they first even told me that's where I actually even learned what a Bigfoot, and at the time was later, call it Sasquatch. So it's all weird. It all kind of ties together in this really bizarre way. And it, like the encounter I had is almost like this weird, almost like a bow on top of a gift. It's really hard to describe, but I think that's because it's such a unique encounter, and everyone who encounters this kind of stuff has their own unique situation. And that's, I think, what makes them so fantastical. Is first argument people will have is, I've been out here so long, how come I haven't seen it? Well, I was out here so long, then I finally saw it. So maybe your time hasn't come yet. It's unique for everyone, and it sticks with you. It really does stick with you, and it continues to make me think about things. I know when I drive it late at night, I think about it almost every time. I'm like, it'd be kind of bizarre if I saw it again. And it just sticks with you. It's a special thing. It's creepy, special, exciting, horrifying, but also important because it kind of puts you in your place too. Like I said earlier, it really kind of put me in my place. So that's my take on it.
It really is no wonder that you're dealing with that encounter so well. I love the way you think. It's really refreshing. You said that knowing that dogmen are out there is both freaky and exciting at the same time. Does that mean you'd like to have another encounter someday?
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't like to have... Let me put it this way. Sure, I'd love to have another encounter. As long as I knew that I was somehow in a safe situation. Because if I were to come across that specific entity I saw by myself, alone in the woods, say, with no means of calling for help, and for just to say some odd reason, instead of him being more passive, this time he's hungry and I look really delicious, I would be very upset. I'd be very scared, and I would probably fear for my life. But if I could maybe see one, with a group, somehow be able to monitor it safely from a distance, get close to it, maybe even, I'd love to. It'd be so incredibly exciting, especially now that I've really expanded my, filmography and my skills in film and recording and just being able to capture images. I think would be the better time than ever, just hopefully under the correct circumstances. I have possibly something of an opportunity like that. Right now, the Bridges family have asked that Connor and I possibly come out and do some investigations at their home one night or two here soon, because they've been having lots of activity. And Miss Carolyn Bridges, she has gone on record many times to say that she believes something out there could possibly be a Dogman. So that could be a great opportunity for me to possibly come across it again, and hopefully with the safety and security of knowing that other people are nearby. But at the same time, that could also be a deterrent to such activity, because, I've heard lots of different things from different people that, certain things will actually push away creatures like a Dogman or a Sasquatch, because they are aware of what you're doing. They have a mental, almost like telekinetic ability of knowing, someone's looking for them, someone wants to see them. It's just this ability they have even. So possible opportunity. I'd love to take it up, find out, hope it's in a safe environment, because I would like to see one again. Just, I don't want to turn it into a horror film. Not that I'm saying it would. I might be completely wrong in thinking that, but I like to kind of be, better safe than sorry personally, but that's just me. I would like to be in a situation where I could somehow capture a good shot, because I'm a nerd for film and photography. So it would be like one of the highest honors ever to get something like that on a good, just clean shot of it. It would really mean the world to me. But, things happen, things don't. So you never know.
Well, I'm glad to hear that opportunity presented itself. I hope it pans out for you.
Me too. Just got to act on it between work and school and everything else. I'm always very busy. The weekends are the one time I can just take a breath. So I'm trying to, hopefully maybe when the holidays come up here soon and the state, our kind governor will decide to let us have some time off, maybe I can take advantage of it and sync up my schedule with Connor and we can make the magic happen.
Well, I hope you can. That'd be great. Even though your parents brushed off your encounter, they just might have had an encounter of their own. What can you tell us about what happened to them?
Yes, I had moved out of the house. This hadn't been too terribly long after I moved out. Finally needed to stretch my wings and get out on my own, especially since I had my new job and everything. And they called me, or my mother called me, and she was telling me, we just heard the weirdest thing ever. And for her to sound so shaken up, it's very unusual, because she's the most level-headed person I know on the planet. And I asked her what happened, and she said that her and my dad were sitting on the front porch with my dog, Kiwi, short for Keanu. He's a great little dog. He's a brave little dog. When I say little, I call him little. He's really not. He's like a 70-pound kind of lab wool mix. He's a very, very, very kind, great dog. I love him to death. That's my boy. And they said that they were sitting on the front porch. It wasn't quite complete sundown yet. It was still a little bit of light out, not much, but they heard something. Initially, they thought it was a dog in the woods growling, but what caught them was how loud and close it felt. So they said it was very bizarre. It's almost like they could feel it growling. And Kiwi, our dog, very upset about this. Very, 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 very upset. One moment he's growling in retaliation. The next moment he's tucking his tail between his legs. So they went inside. And not long after that, my mom said that they could hear it again. But more so than hearing it, they felt it, like in their chest, like echo vibration. Echo kind of like you could just feel it vibrating. And she said that there was a loud growl, howl mixture is what she calls it. Something loud, something not quite a howl, not quite a growl, something between the two. And that it really just completely sent the dog into a spiral, sent our cat inside into a spiral. It upset my mom pretty bad. My dad, being how he is, he's completely, he puts off all of it. He doesn't think anything that isn't in a nature book or a history book somewhere, he doesn't think it's real. So he put it off as anything else he could possibly think of. But for it to really rattle my mother like that is noteworthy because I've learned, I've pretty much my traits I got from her. So for her to be upset, I know it had to be something really bad or really, really freaky. So for her to tell me that, I know it was something legitimate. And even though my dad will deny it, that's just how he is. He's old fashioned like that. So they definitely heard something that was big, massive, potentially dangerous. They haven't heard anything else since. This was back in 2019, I'd say. Probably November 2019, because I hadn't moved out very long at all. I was still living in my apartment alone before I adopted my cats. So I remember it kind of freaked me out a little bit, thinking, oh my gosh, what if it came here? But where I live now is far more populated. There's the thickest forest is the decent little ways away, not too far, but enough. So it definitely freaked me out, but it was also exciting because it happened again. And now it happened to the two people in the world that it needed to happen to the most, because they were the ones that, kind of made me feel like I was just going crazy. So I'm happy my mom heard it and is kind of got a more open mind about it. But my dad, he still the same way about it.
Your dad's obviously never going to believe you, but now that your mom heard that vocalization, does she believe that you saw that Dogman?
She definitely thinks I saw something more abnormal than what I should normally see. She won't go on record to say, oh yeah, it's a Dogman, but she'll definitely agree with me that it was something far more extravagant than just some big bear or whatnot. And then once she heard it from my coworker who she buys eggs from her, that kind of helped nail things home a little bit too. So it's all kind of helped out a little bit. She won't go on record and come out and go, oh yeah, Dogman, but she'll definitely not just completely disapprove of it being something different than the norm now, which I'm appreciative of. That shows that she has definitely been changed by it, and that's better than nothing in my book.
It is. That's a start. Yeah, I guess that's better than nothing. Well, it's about time for us to get out of here, Jack, but before we do you have any closing comments you'd like to share?
I really appreciate you bringing me on the show. It's been fun, exciting. It's nice to talk about it and to talk about it in an environment that really, it's beneficial to hear my story because it might help someone else. You had told me that you spoke with some individuals that really having a tough time with it, and I may not be, but I can completely understand why. Truly, I do. It makes sense to me because it's the stuff of, in some cases, nightmares. And like I said, it's kind of encouraged me to be more creative with my writing and stuff too, because it's literally the stuff of nightmares, and like horror and sci-fi are my favorite genres. So it has definitely influenced my writing, but at the same time, that source of influence is a source of fear and something that upsets somebody for what is a creative, blossom for me is something bad for someone else. So I understand where people are coming from, and I just wish them the best, hope they can recover from it, and that, maybe if they ever do have another encounter again, that it's not so bad. But other than that, I'm just really glad you brought me on. It's fun. I need to do more documentary work. I really enjoyed spreading the message that the bridges had to give the people. It's really, really fun to me because it's almost like I'm getting to make a movie, but in that situation, it's like real life, because this is something that happened. That makes it even more exciting to me. And with them saying they have more encounters, it just makes me want to get out there more. I just got to clear my schedule. But I really, really appreciate you letting me on. And I'm also appreciative of the people who have encouraged me to do stuff like this, like my buddy Connor Flynn. He's really been a big help in a lot of that stuff because he's been able to talk to me about it and help me also feel like that I'm not, seeing something that I shouldn't be seeing. It's just part of our world. It's something that happens and not everyone sees it, but when they do, it generally sticks with them, and it stuck with me pretty good. Like I said, it's influenced me a lot. So I just really appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk about it. It's a lot of fun.
Well, you're welcome. And also, too, if I can ever help you and or Connor in any way, please do let me know, because I'd be more than happy to do that. But having said that, thanks so much for coming on and sharing those experiences with us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. If we ever, you have a really, really, really exceptional like on-air voice. Maybe if we ever need a good voiceover for some follow-up to one of our films, we'll definitely be in touch with you.
Well, thanks for saying that. If I can help you that way too, yeah, please let me know. I'd be happy to. But like I said, thanks again so much. Have a great night.